نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. In the book Nur-ul-Idaah, we are going through the book of Salah, book of prayers. Today we talk about voluntary prayers while sitting. If one is doing nafil prayer other than fard or wajib, then it is perfectly fine to offer them while sitting, whether there is an excuse or not. Although one should know that they would be rewarded half the reward of the one who does it standing, unless obviously there's a reason for this. So if someone has a medical reason or shari'i reason, then they will be given full reward. How should one sit while they're praying? The most preferred view is that they should sit as they sit in tashahhud. However, there is a leeway. One can sit in whichever way comfortable. As I said, it is preferred unless there's a reason for one to pray. Even if they're praying sitting the nafil prayer, then they should assume the posture of tashahhud when you say at-tahiyyat in your normal prayers. If one started standing their nafil prayer and during the course of the prayer they decide to sit down, even that is okay. Because for nafil prayer, qiyam, which is standing, is not a pillar. Hence why it is okay to perform these prayers sitting. Imam Abu Hanifa's two students, Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, they do not allow that. They say one has to continue in one posture. So if someone doesn't have an excuse, then they should continue if they started off in standing, even if it's their nafil prayer. If they have a reason, then there's no problem with that. To sit down in the middle of your prayer. Obviously, this is for nafil prayer. Now, if someone is riding, obviously we don't ride beasts these days, but we can take the same ruling for cars, buses, trains. If one is outside of the city, it is perfectly fine to perform their nafil prayer sitting on the ride. And obviously he would be pointing with the head while he's prostrating a little, and then for sajda a bit more than the ruku'. And the evidence for that is from the hadith of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, who said that I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying on the back of a donkey when he was facing Khaybar, and he was praying through indication. It means he was just moving his head down for ruku' and sujood. Now, when one is outside of their city, they can start shortening their prayer as they would normally do, but also they can perform their nawafil sitting. But Imam Abu Hanifa would actually allow even for the person to be at home and not traveling to perform prayer while riding, with indications. Meaning, it is not a must for one to be a traveler in order to perform prayer on a ride. Imam Shafi'i and Imam Malik, rahimahumullah, they opine that it is not permitted unless one is a traveler. But Hanafi view is that you can. If one started off their journey and they were praying in the car, on the beast, a camel, a donkey, and then they dismounted. He or she can continue with their prayer provided they have not moved too much when they dismounted the animal. So they were praying, they started their nafil while they were in the car, for example, and then they came to their destination. So if they just come off the mount with very limited movement, just say one step outside of the car, and they continued with their prayer, again, nafil prayer we're talking about, then it would be okay, provided that he hasn't moved too much. Otherwise, amali kathir, excessive action, will break the prayer. The contrary is not true though. If one started off praying on the ground and then they moved onto the mount, so obviously they cannot continue with their prayer. And the reason for that is, since they started off their prayer on the ground, they were supposed to do the facing of the Qibla, Ittihadul Qibla. And obviously, they also were supposed to do their ruku and sujood. Now they're in the car or on their mount, they'll be praying with hint now, which obviously cannot happen when they started off as a standing person on the ground. Even for Sunnah Mu'akkada, it is okay. Even for 2 Sunnah of Fajr, it is okay to pray on the beast with indication, with nodding. However, Imam Abu Hanifa would suggest that one should try and dismount for, especially for 2 Sunnah of Fajr, because they are highly emphasized Sunnah. One can lean on to something like a stick or a wall if they are tired. Obviously, without a reason, it would be mildly disliked. But we should try and avoid it. If they're tired, they want to continue with their recitation, longer recitation, and they're so tired, they can go into ruku. But if they feel like leaning onto something for a few seconds just to gain some strength, and that is okay. It will be disliked without a reason. With a reason, it is fine. If the beast or the car has some filth on them, it doesn't affect the prayer. The cleanliness or the purity is required for the person praying on his body and on his clothes, not on the animal. So there's a leeway for that, because it would be cumbersome, very much of hardship for the individual if they were to check their tire every time they offer any nafil prayer, based on necessity, obviously. Prayer is not permitted if someone is walking, by the consensus. Now what about fard and wajib? So now you know that nafil prayers can be performed on the car. Knowing this, one should try and make it a habit when they're traveling and someone is taking you for a long ride, long journey, going to different city, few hours worth of journey, half an hour even. It's time for, not a makruh time for tahajjud, time for ishraq, chash, any other prayer. Just offer some nafil prayer. Keep yourself in wudu, sit in the car, Allahu Akbar, start off, do 2, 4, however much you could, inshallah ta'ala, rather than wasting time. Many a time, we have these opportunities where we fail to seize those. We should try and make the maximum benefit, take the maximum benefit out of that opportunity when you're especially on a longer journey, 3, 4 hours worth of journey. So we tend to waste our time in talking, maybe sleeping, maybe getting off to have some snacks, maybe then reclining a little bit, and maybe watching something on phone, chit chat, listening to music, committing some haram. When this is a time when you're riding, you're quite vulnerable. We all know that how many accidents happen. We should be much more fearful. We should be obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anyway, every time, all the time. But this is the time when one can take some advantage and take some stock for the life hereafter, inshallah ta'ala. Fard and wajib prayer are not permitted on a beast. And janazah prayer likewise is not. Other wajib prayer are, as I said, witr. And the prayer of nazar. So if you have promised, you vowed to pray something. If something happened, if Allah give me this, I will do this. If I achieve this, I will pray 2 rakat. Then that becomes your vow prayer, nazar prayer. You have to perform that, becomes wajib as well. And likewise, a voluntary prayer, which was nullified due to some action. In Hanafi school, there's a concept that a nafil prayer, a nafil action becomes fard when you start off it. If you started a nafil action, be it fasting or prayer, then it becomes wajib. Then you have to continue. You cannot break it off and say, oh, since it was only nafil, I'm not going to continue. No, you have to then. And they take the evidence from Quranic ayah, وَلَا تُبْطِلُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ. O you who believe, in the beginning, and then do not do such and such thing, and then وَلَا تُبْطِلُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ. Do not nullify your action. Do not make your action null and void. So this was a nafil prayer you started. You can't nullify it by just, oh, I'm not going to do it type attitude. Rather, you have to make up for that at a later date, some other time, maybe immediately afterwards. Likewise, sajdatul shukr or sajdatul tilawa actually, you cannot perform on a beast. Sajdatul shukr is fine, but sajdatul tilawa, when you recite Quran, provided that you have recited that Quran on the ground and then you mount it on the beast and you thought, oh, let me just read all my sajdatul tilawa. I've got quite a few to offer, let me just do it now while I'm riding in the car. So you can't do that if you had recited those Quranic ayat when you were on the ground. So if you recited while you're traveling on the mount, then it's fine. Obviously, if there was a necessity, a fear, for example, for enemy, for losing your life, for robbery, the beast might be affected and attacked by someone, something, or the stuff could be stolen. So then you are allowed to continue to pray while you're on the mount. As Allah says in the Quran, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا. If you fear an enemy, then you can pray while you're on the foot or on the riding. Other excuses could be a predatory animal, a beast, another beast trying to attack you, a wild beast. Ground is muddy, so marshy that if you were to prostrate, you perhaps drown in that. Means your head would disappear, would sink in it. Or if you had no beast, you can't perform on the beast then, or on the mount, and there's a lot of mud, then you can pray standing with nodding only. Or if the animal is completely uncontrollable and no help around, you do not want to dismount because you might not be able to go back on it, then you can perform any prayer on that. So there's excuse, then inshallah ta'ala is fine. The carriage, which is fixed upon a beast, like your saddle or some sort, a proper, howdaj. Then it is like you're praying on the beast, same thing. If you stop and put a log underneath that howdaj or the carriage, so that they act as a pillar for the carriage, which is leaning onto the ground. So those pillars are connected to the ground, and then this howdaj is leaning and you're sitting on that. Then it is as if you are praying on the ground. Then there's no problem with that. You can pray any prayer there. Even fard you can pray. Obviously, you should be standing in that case, because as if you are standing on the ground because of the connection. Just like the second floor of your house, second floor of the masjid, or first floor of the masjid that you're praying, that's perfectly fine because the columns or the pillars connect that top level to the ground. So it becomes like the floor. So it's perfectly fine to pray on that. Obviously, you have to pray standing if you're performing your fard prayer or wajib prayer, not sitting. What about ship? So if the ship is moving, then there's a difference of opinion whether you can perform sitting or standing. Should you be performing your prayer standing or sitting? Talking about fard prayer, obviously. So Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, would say you can perform sitting because naturally you feel dizzy. You may sway a bit. You might not be able to control yourself. But Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad differed on that. They say unless there's a reason, you cannot perform sitting in a moving ship. But obviously, you should still be bowing and doing sajda in the sitting posture, not just by moving your head as you would do on a ride or a mount. The best is to stand up and pray, inshallah ta'ala, to avoid the difference. Yes, if there was a reason, then it's okay. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that pray standing in a ship except if you fear drowning. Means if you move, sway and be out of control, then that's a different matter. One has to perform ruku and sajda though. This is agreed upon. Now if the ship is in the middle of the sea and is being anchored, then ship tends to sway with the strong winds. If that's the case, it is counted as a moving ship, which means that one may pray sitting according to Imam Abu Hanifa, but not according to Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad. Same difference of opinion, as if this is a moving ship. Same rule will apply. If it's not swaying, it's completely static, there's no wind, then inshallah ta'ala, it's fine. And if it's tied at the shore, at the seashore, then you cannot perform sitting. For those who can stand up, you should be coming out of the ship and pray. Now, one exception would be if part of the ship is settled on the ground. The bottom of the ship is connected to the ground, it's attached there. So then, as if this is a normal place, then it's all okay. So you are not hanging in the middle, you are actually on the ground, then it's fine, like any other building. But you have to pray standing though, because you cannot pray on the ground sitting, talking about your fard prayer. Nafil prayer, yes, it's okay. Nafil is okay anyway. But if you're not allowed to come out of the ship, you're stuck inside, then obviously you can pray even if the bottom is not attached to the surface, to the ground. Okay, so that was the topic for today. May Allah give us tawfiq to understand and apply some of those rules to your practical issues and situations that you are in, especially going in a car, in the train. One should try and get as much benefit as possible by performing nawafil. When it's time for fard prayer, one important point I missed is, which is the final point, that one should, in a ship, they have to continue to follow Qibla. They must face Qibla. With the ship moving here and there, you should continue to move accordingly. So that is extremely important point. The last slide, I think I just accidentally deleted. was about this. The one should make sure that they move their position during the prayer while they are in the ship, praying standing, continue even sitting. They should continue to move according to the direction. So if the direction was towards the right and ship is moving towards the left, they should continue to move towards the right further so as to keep that focus towards Qibla. That is an obligation. Obviously, they be a traveler, they have to do only 2 prayers, so they can, inshallah ta'ala, do within, very few minutes. But that is the ruling there as well. Allah give us tawfiq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.